So, you know how companies release their earnings reports every quarter? And usually they're kind of predictable. But every now and then, a company drops a report that is so wild, so far off the charts, that you just have to stop and figure out what on earth is going on. Well, that's exactly what just happened with Palantir. Okay, let's get into this because the numbers are something else. We're going to start with just this one number, 127%. Just burn that into your brain for a minute. It's the key to this whole story. And right now, it probably seems pretty abstract, but believe me, it represents a kind of performance that, for a software company of Palantir's size, should be pretty much impossible. And look, it wasn't just analysts who were floored. This is how Palantir's own CEO, Alex Karp, kicked off their earnings call. I mean, when a CEO starts throwing around words like iconic and historic, you know you gotta pay attention. So, what's really behind all that hype and that crazy 127% figure? All right, so first up, let's unpack what that 127% actually means and why it's making so many waves. This isn't just a big number. It's a number that basically breaks the rules for how we measure software companies. So, to get what's going on here, you got to know about something called the Rule of 40. It's a really simple yardstick for software companies. You just take their revenue growth rate and you add their profit margin. If that number is over 40%, you're looking at a super healthy, high-performing company. It's like the gold standard in the industry. Right. Now, look at this. The visual here says it all. The industry goal, the mark of excellence, is 40. Palantir didn't just squeak by it. They didn't even double it. They absolutely obliterated it, coming in at 127. I mean, this isn't an outlier. This is a whole different ballgame. And that rule of 127 score is being fueled by some just staggering numbers underneath. Get this, overall revenue is up 70% year over year. In the US alone, up 93%. And they closed $4.3 billion in contracts in a single quarter, their best ever. These are not the stats of some mature, slow growth company. This is pure hypergrowth. So the big question is, how? How is this even happening? You don't post numbers like this by just doing things a little bit better. Palantir's argument is that it's because they're playing an entirely different game, a strategy they call N of 1, as in, they believe they're a category of 1. I mean, that's really the core question we have to answer, right? A company that's been around for 2 decades, that's already this big, isn't supposed to suddenly start growing at a speed that would make a brand new startup jealous. So what's the engine behind all this? Okay, so Palantir's whole philosophy boils down to this split right here. On one side, you've got what they call commodity cognition. Think of all the AI models, the LLMs, they're everywhere now, which means they're not a special advantage anymore. But on the other side, you have platform leverage. And this is where Palantir says the real value is. The AI model itself is kind of useless if you can't plug it into a company's real data, its real operations, and make it actually do something. And the secret sauce, the absolute heart of that platform, is something called the ontology. One of their customers on the earnings call literally called it the secret weapon. The best way to think about it is like a living, breathing digital twin of an entire company, all its factories, all its suppliers, every single process. It's this deep map that lets an AI actually understand the context of the business and do useful work, not just, write a poem. And this quote from their chief revenue officer, wow, it just lays out their worldview so clearly. They truly believe a massive split is happening in the business world. Companies that figure this out and implement this kind of AI operating system become the haves. Everyone else, they get left behind as the have-nots. It is a really stark, almost brutal way of looking at the market. So, if this great divergence is happening, where's the epicenter? Where's it happening the fastest? Well, the data all points to one place. Palantir is a global company, sure, but this recent explosion, it is an American story, through and through. And this chart just makes it crystal clear. A whopping 77% of Palantir's total business is now coming from the United States. That's not just a majority, that's a massive concentration that tells you exactly where this strategy is catching fire right now. And if you slice up that 93% growth in the US, the numbers get even more wild. The US government business grew by an incredible 66%. But look at the commercial side. Their business with US companies grew by an unbelievable 137%. In 1 year. That is the acceleration we're talking about. Now, numbers on a page are one thing, but what does this stuff actually do? Let's look at some real-world examples of how this software is being used, everywhere from the factory floor to the front lines. Here's a perfect case study: ShipOS. The U.S. Navy is trying to tackle this huge problem of modernizing its fleet and its shipbuilding supply chain. We're talking decades of delays and cost overruns. Palantir landed a contract for up to $448 million to bring their software in to help fix it. And this is the kind of impact it's having. This is just jaw-dropping. At one shipyard, planning a submarine schedule used to take 160 hours. That is a full work month for one person. Now, it takes them 10 minutes. A review process for materials that took weeks now takes less than an hour. That's the kind of change that doesn't just improve an industry, it completely transforms it. But it's not just about these huge, complex systems. It's also about empowering individuals. They're launching something called the American Tech Fellowship, which is a program designed to take veterans and soldiers, people who have that deep, real-world experience, and actually turn them into AI developers. So the big idea here is simple, but it's also kind of radical. Instead of having engineers in Silicon Valley try to guess what a soldier needs on the battlefield, you put the tools to build the solution directly into the hands of that soldier. You give the power to the person with the expertise. Okay, so let's pull back for a second. We've got the impossible numbers, the we're in our own category strategy, and the real-world impact. What does this all point to for the future? Well, Palantir's leadership thinks we are watching the start of a great divergence, not just between companies, but between entire countries. First off, Palantir is basically telling everyone this wasn't a fluke. Just look at their guidance for next year. They're projecting 61% revenue growth overall, and for their U.S. commercial business to keep growing at a blistering pace of over 115%. They're signaling that this incredible acceleration is actually their new normal. But here's where the story takes a really interesting and maybe even a little unnerving geopolitical turn. Alex Skarp is pointing out that while American companies and government are adopting this tech like crazy, our traditional allies in Europe and Canada are not. He sees a technology gap opening up, not between us and our adversaries, but right inside the Western world. And that really leaves us with this final, massive question. If Palantir is right, if AI is creating this deep divide between the technological haves and have-nots, what does that mean for the future? Where will the chips fall? It's a question that could redefine not just who wins in business, but the entire global balance of power.